So up next, I would like to welcome a great friend of ours, Josh from Sensor Tower, who's going to be talking about. You're pretty much going to be talking about what's the Sensor Tower's reports, aren't you? Pretty much. So do you want to come onto the stage, Josh? So we can give a round of applause for Josh, please. Oh, you've got a mic. That's all good. Yeah, that's fine. All good. I'll leave you to it.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name's Josh, as Charlie said, from Sensor Tower. For those that don't know what Sensor Tower is, what we do, we are a competitive intelligence platform within the mobile app ecosystem. But also recently, we've branched out into PC console data too. And today, really, the plan is to take you guys through a bit of a state of gaming, including some general app trends on kind of a high level. If anybody does ever have any questions, feel free to, of course, ask towards the end. But also to feel free to get in touch with me kind of after the presentation. I think I'll probably be the only presentation this week at PGC Helsinki that maybe doesn't mention AI. I think it's been mentioned in every single session I've been to, which is a great thing. But I'll try to avoid that word for a little while. So let's hop in. And really, the way that we're going to look at this report is kind of year-to-date 2025 in terms of where we're at comparable to 2024. So let's hop in. In terms of the agenda that we're going to kind of run through, I think the first thing you guys may be looking at is how many slides is this guy going to present. Please don't be scared by 23. We will run through this nice and smoothly on a nice high level. But really, we're going to start on the mobile industry level, give you really a feel of which direction is the mobile industry taking of year to date, into PC console, and then also look into some live services and our new kind of live ops tracking tool, and start to understand some strong use cases and success stories that we've seen from a mobile gaming perspective. And then, of course, a nice conclusion, and then we can all move on. So let's start with mobile, as mentioned. One thing, formatting error, good start. One thing that we can see is mobile gaming downloads are down, okay? Revenue is flat. But what we have seen is that mobile players are still playing the same time, but in shorter sessions. There's a couple of reasons that this conclusion could come, and I'll dig into that a little bit further. But although we're kind of down on the download side, it's only 6% over the same period. But actually, we do see some in-app purchase revenue on an increase of year to date. Non-gaming has actually nearly overtaken gaming in-app purchases. And we can see within the graph here, this is the first time that non-gaming has come close to overtaking gaming in-app purchase revenue, which is very interesting to see. But one thing we can see with the second graph there on the far side is that gaming still holds the revenue against your typical categories of kind of software, media, entertainment, and kind of outside of other. So although we do see non-gaming, being caught up by the general app market, we still see strength when we look on a category level. And there's probably potentially a couple of reasons that in-app purchase revenue is maybe being chased. This could be, of course, with D2C coming into play, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. This formatting is really playing with me. But one thing we have seen is that mobile has seen the in-app purchase growth year to date comparable to 2024. And we can see that in-app purchase revenue is actually up 10% across both stores, which is great to see, and gives us a positive outlook going forward. And again, even though D2C is lingering and stepping away from the typical in-app purchase revenue, we're still seeing the increase on your traditional store revenue, which I think overall from the gaming market is a really positive outlook for 2025 and beyond. In the middle, we can see the total app revenue platform by worldwide. And again, we can see strong growth, over 12 billion on year to date based on 2024 into 2025. So let's talk about this on a geographical level. And one thing that we've started to see is significant revenue growth, particularly within the Middle East. This is, of course, for a number of reasons, but typically the reason that we believe we've seen this is the growth within Saudi, not only the Saudi market, but also the growth that we see from the likes of Savvy and those within the market as well. But there's also positive growth that we see for Europe and Latin America as well from a download perspective. Downloads are up in these particular regions. And if we look at the regions that are being potentially affected, looking at North America and particularly Asia that are seeing a download decline and revenue decline that we see. This could be related to some macroeconomic factors such as the dollar strength against these particular regions. And when we look on a genre level, away from a geo level, we can see that strategy really is winning 2025 year to date in terms of revenue. They're seeing huge revenue increase and download increase. This could be down to a couple of titles being successful, but it's important that we really do highlight strategy who are really stepping away into their kind of own space from in there. And then if we look more towards the bottom left-hand corner, we can see potentially the genres that are potentially not performing as well. Racing and action and lifestyle games, we see as on a market level potentially taking the hit here across a genre level. When we look at a publisher level, it's important to note that Tencent just remains the top mobile gaming publisher that we see year to date, but we start to see Century Games become a growing contender. It's important to note that. We see First Fun as well, with obviously Last War Survival increasing their app revenue by 92% from year to date, and Century Games also growing around 55% year to date in 2025. So on a publisher level, of course, we still have the big players in the space performing well, but we also have those that are starting to challenge this with individual titles. Last War Survival, again, drove the most mobile game revenue in the first half of 2025, which is important to note. And Roblox is the game that has the most users in terms of when we're looking at monthly active users. There's also some other mentions that we see here, and I'll hop back into this on a PC console level, but some of EA Sports titles and with their FC Mobile Soccer also stepping into the monthly active users year to date for the first time of that level across the top 10 that we have within here. Let's step away from mobile a little bit and jump onto PC console. And just for context, SenseStar provides PC console data, and this is the source of data that you'll see today. PC console games have been downloaded 1.4 billion times so far this year, and we're looking at total downloads year to date within here. As you can see within the graph, Steam remains the largest platform, and these downloads that or units sold that we're including here includes both free-to-play and downloads within here. So it's important, Steam is still leading the race, PlayStation, Xbox is coming close, and we'll dive into that a little bit further. One thing on Steam, they've seen great growth throughout the years, and 2024 was a record year for Steam in terms of units sold. They are very close, if headwinds continue, to having another record year in 2025. This is down to a few factors you can see within the bottom, so it is important to note. So consumer spend throughout this is increasing and increasing. We project that they could potentially overtake this, but this really does depend on their Q4 success across the market. So overall, PC console is looking like a very positive outlook from a consumer spend perspective. If we break into the games that are actually driving this across PC console, of course, as I mentioned, EA Sports FC 25 is the top game by downloads so far within this year, and with their most recent one just releasing 4 weeks ago, we'll start to see the growth from in there. But the interesting takeaway from this slide is that most best-selling games in 2025 are not AAA titles. Successful, and those that have been successful this year from a AAA perspective have all been installments of huge franchises. So it's important to note when we're looking more from an indie and kind of an AM remastered perspective, we can see the games in the middle here that are really starting to drive units sold and also revenue perspective and seeing success. So it's not just AAA that are leading the race here. Again, from a publisher perspective, when we start to understand the PC console market, we can see that EA is clearly the top publisher by 2025 year-to-date downloads. And this is hugely really to the success, as mentioned, from EA FC 25 and other titles within there. But we also see other publishers stepping into this chart for the first time in terms of 2025 year-to-date. So again, it's to highlight an exciting time for potential publishers outside of your typical top publishers that we see within the PC console space. Breaking out into EA's kind of portfolio and what we're starting to look at, of course, we're all well accustomed to EA Sports, and really the performance that we see is driven from this is obviously related to their kind of IP and franchises that we see here. We have mobile on the far side and PC console to the side. And again, the clear kind of release here is around their FC mobile title and linking into their FC 25 here. But we can see a clear breakout and a nice portfolio that they have across both PC console and mobile that are driving success for them both from a download perspective. Let's hop into live ops. I think this was the buzzword of a PGC probably 2 years ago. But let's hop into this, and I'm going to go through a bit of a use case here and analyze, one title in particular, but also talk about live ops from a market perspective. When we talk about live ops, I think it's important to know, and I think everybody in this room knows this, but just doing live ops is no guarantee of growth. I think there was potentially an insinuation that people thought that if we do live ops, we're going to see growth. I think what's important to note here is one thing that we have seen is 78% of the top 1,000 live ops games running on mobile by 2024, their revenue actually declined from half one of 2025 over 2024. So that's important to note. And 6 of the top 1,000 games saw revenue declines of over 100 million for 2025 into 2024. And we can see the decline and also the revenue growth that we see from those games actively having live ops. And it's important to know that successful games have the right events, they're updating them regularly, they're trying new things, but also they're being data-driven, not by their own data sets, but also competitive data sets from a live ops perspective to understand when they get it right or their competitors get it right and learn from their own strategy. And we'll talk about a game that we believe has grown because they had the right live ops strategy in just a second. Just talk about those games, really focusing on live ops and in that purchase revenue growth. We see Whiteout Survival, Last Wall Survival, but the one I want to highlight is Gossip Harbour. This is a question that I get from customers quite often around how are these guys so successful? What have they done? What can we learn? And the next slide will take us into that a little bit. Gossip Harbour, again, really up to their game from a live ops perspective. And we believe this is why they started to see the strong growth within the market, and their competitors of theirs started to take interest and understand why this is happening. For context, this is just a very high-level screenshot of some of the data that we provide around live ops. But one thing that we noticed, they recently introduced a new week-long task event, and this really took off for them and gave them great success within the market, alongside other events, which we'll touch upon. To get into the weeds a little bit, they released this new kind of 7-day task event, and this really took off for these guys. One thing we saw before was a 24-hour event. They had success. It didn't work as well as a 7-day event. So they pivoted to this 7-day event, and they started to see huge revenue growth based on the data that we have and the data that we see from them. And this slide kind of pulls it to pieces. Is looking at Gossip Harbour IAP revenue compared to Gossip Harbour's number of events. Now, some would say, well, if I just do more events, does this mean I just get more revenue? It absolutely doesn't mean that. What it does mean is you need to ensure that, of course, you have the correct live ops events that's successful, and again, you're learning from others. But this chart really shows 2 separate data sets of when they have increased their events, we see that slow drive a revenue increase. Dating back from 2023, when live op events, were below kind of 40 a week, pushing through to almost 75 that we see within here. And we can see that clear correlation between the two there. Cool, so into a conclusion with a couple of minutes left. I know I've been pretty quick. PC console really does look healthy. I mentioned Steam. Steam had a record year in 2024, and we're expected that 2025, if Q4 finishes strong, then they could have a record year based on consumer spend. Growth in legacy games really can be, really is there, and we believe that live ops is the key for this. If learnings are being taken from competitors and your own mistakes, and again, PGC this week is a great opportunity to work within the network and understand who's made mistakes, who's been successful, and learn from that for your own. And also on the far side, not to keep mentioning EA, but the core of sports, IP franchises, new originals, really help them lead the PC console space, while Tencent remains the king for mobile gaming. And again, just to kind of highlight and echo this, with EA Sports and the recent acquisition, it'd be interesting to see which direction that this will take. And also with the increase in D2C payments and typical payments outside of stores, this is something that SenseStar will start to track very soon. So we're excited to see where the growth and the direction that this comes from as well. And with that, I'll finish up. Are we good for questions, Charlie? Cool.
Any questions? Okay, Chris has a question
Oh,
right
no.
at the front.
Oh, no.
Because you mentioned D2C, which is obviously a challenge for you guys, but also a big opportunity. Because you were saying that I think IAP revenue was up 10% via the stores, despite a lot of money going off. So that would not include D2C revenue via their own stores, right?
Correct, yeah. So we've seen 10% increase across both stores, so Google Play and iOS, yeah, despite D2C.
So if you add D2C, which some people are saying is like between 20, or some people say as high as 50% of the big, I'm not sure it's that big, but it's substantial, then really the numbers, our top level, how big the market is, could go up quite a bit, I guess. Are you expecting quite a big, when you start getting that data, a big
Total
redraw
revenue.
of everything?
Yeah, I'd say so in terms of like a total revenue factor.
In terms of the top
Absolutely,
level,
yeah. I think that's something we're expecting to see. I won't let on too much, but yeah, it's something that we will have soon.
You can share. There's no one. It's fine.
Yeah, I can share, but I may get told off. But yeah, I think it's really positive between the traditional stores. Although we're seeing public reports and customers and people in the room reporting that D2C is working and they have these new revenue streams. But the traditional methods, we're still seeing revenue increase, which I think is really positive for the whole market, for sure. But yeah, I think the total revenue will potentially really shock us from that perspective.
I'll ask one way more quick question I'll pass on. Why do you think, because your numbers, and all the numbers I'm seeing, top level, are upwards. It's return to health for mobile, it's like a PC console going well. Why do you think there's still a bit of a malaise then?
It's a good question. Maybe one I should take the insights team. But my perspective is, I think the games industry can often be quite negative. And I think potentially the data has always been okay, if I'm being honest. I think because in the games industry there's so much talent and profession, I think when there's a hit to the industry, we potentially get a little negative about that and think that it's all doom and gloom. I think that's really, from my perspective, I think it was more of, the data's always been there that the market's doing okay. And I think it's just more of an opinionated thing, in my opinion.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. My question on the mobile scene is about the winner takes it all situation. So how's the health of the newcomers in the market? Because mostly they're concentrated on the top franchises. There are being space for newcomers lately, or it's concentrated all in the known titles?
Yeah, good question. We actually have, within our most recent report, like a market concentration kind of couple of slides where it starts to look at, is it just the leaders taking the market? Is it becoming saturated, etc.? We are seeing growth from newer entrants in the market, for sure. I don't have the figures to hand, but yeah, I think in terms of the saturation from the top developers, of course, we are seeing the winner takes all kind of method coming into play there. But we're also seeing growth from newcomers. And as a business for SenseStar as well, we're continuously working with brand new developers who are coming into the space and have a positive outlook. So I think from that side, we are seeing the excitement still for newcomers within the game. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's just the top publishers taking it all at this point.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. It's still hard to predict what the future holds, but any ideas of insights about what's going to be happening in near future? Well, especially with 26 having pretty major releases, and how would you think it will affect the market and the industry as a whole?
Yeah, good question. We're actually due to bring out like a 2026 Outlook report soon, so keep an eye out for that for one. But I think from my perspective, I think we're seeing traditionally with the mobile developers that we work with pivoting to PC console. And I think we'll start to see stronger growth there. I think with Steam having kind of record years, I think we'll continue to see that. I think that's almost close to a cert from what we're seeing and what we're hearing. From a mobile perspective, like I say, revenue is increasing, and I think nobody truly knows what's been made from D2C, apart from public reports that we can, of course, access. But I think on a market level, nobody truly knows what we're actually seeing from that perspective. So I think when we get that total revenue figure, I guess, from your typical stores and third party, I think that will really open up some excitement within the game market for 2026 and beyond. Sure.
Cool. Can we give Josh a round of applause, please?
Thanks, everybody.
So if you have any more questions for Josh, please do connect with him throughout the conference. I'm sure there'll be many questions and data insights that he'll be able to share across these next couple of days.